I was in the drug world. My boyfriend at the time was a dealer, and up until I was pregnant, I was using. I just knew I couldn't bring a baby home there.
I could get released and be dealing drugs by that evening, and it was just a continual cycle of crime and incarceration and crime, incarceration. And I was having a hard time of it, and I called the woman that was supposed to be helping me, and I was just bawling, like I'm just a criminal trying not to be. And it doesn't take long to go from like maybe getting in trouble a few times to having a record where it's an issue. And I was way past it's an issue.
Epilepsy got bad for me in my early to mid 30s. It makes it very difficult. It makes it difficult to maintain employment. It makes it difficult to want to be alone, because you never know when you're gonna have an episode.
I started drinking really heavily and just became a full-blown alcoholic. I knew I needed help, but I just didn't know how. And so for the next 13 years, I drank heavily until I guess I hit rock bottom.
I struggled long enough with alcoholism. Went to a couple of different treatment programs where I spent my money. I knew I needed to make some changes, and I had begun to cry out to God, I don't care what you do.
If we can develop that trust, the barriers come down, the walls come down, and then I think they feel comfortable. Once they're comfortable, they kind of get into a routine. It takes them about 3 to 5 days. Once they check into the mission, if they never stayed here, to kind of get like, okay, this isn't so bad. But it's that first 3 days, if you can build a relationship to help them through those days, they tend to thrive.
If they have children or they've had some past bad experiences, knowing that our building's safe, just physical safety, knowing that someone can't just walk in off the street, knowing that our volunteers, they go through a thorough process of making sure that they're safe to be here.
For most people coming in, they are in survival mode. And it's not just physical survival mode, so it doesn't even matter if they have a shelter over their head. Most of their life, maybe all of their life, they've been living in emotional survival mode. And that is, I can't trust other people, so I have to figure out how I'm going to get through life on my own.
Both the mom and the kids need to feel a sense of safety. They need that fight or flight response going on in life to be calmed. They need other people to surround them and be a part of their family to bring that sense of safety.
Oftentimes, whatever the person is addicted to has become their friend. Because they aren't trusting other people, that's the thing they go to feel normal for a little bit, or not feel lonely for a little bit, because it numbs all that pain. So when they choose to start being separate from that, all these feelings start coming, like anxiety or guilt or shame. So they give up the best thing they know to help take care of that. So it's like letting go of a best friend.
We get a lot of men that come here for the fact is we're a higher barrier to shelter. I mean, because they know that the alcohol and the drugs won't be tolerated in-house. But we do give grace. If somebody comes here, shows up, and they're going to test positive for something, we give them the 30 days to work through that. But it's that intentionality of building that relationship to see what's drove them to the point of using addiction or mental health. We want to come alongside of them. We're going to hold them accountable, but we're going to love them.
It gives you a sense of organization and of seriousness and of safety. This isn't some place that anybody can come to. I mean, anybody can, but this is their place. And these are their rules, and the UGM is a very safe place. And that's why, because it's not a low barrier shelter. It's a high barrier, and it has standards, and the standards are upheld, and you're expected to abide by those.
When I first walked in the UGM crisis shelter for women and children, it was home. The women here helped me feel okay. It's very welcoming, very safe. Like I was a person, not just another freeloader.
I experienced safety here my first day. I got here, and as I was getting out of the vehicle and my ride left, I had a seizure. I had a seizure outside in front. I fell back and I hit my head, and UGM got me to the hospital. I woke up in the hospital. That's when I felt safety.
They loved me anyway. They took care of me. They allowed me, I didn't have to worry about calling in for a boss and getting fired. I didn't have to worry about, I can't work, I don't have food for my kids. I don't have a place to go or shampoo or heat or air conditioning. It was they just allowed me to get well.
We have a lot of resources, whether you need clothing rooms, food banks, legal help, job skill. There's a lot of resources.
They provide 3 meals for you, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They provide a roof over your head. They even provide clothing if you need it. So you can focus on getting other things together to get back there in society, to get back out to where you want to be.
I met my future mentor, which I didn't know that's who she was. She, I guess, made it so I was feeling safe to explore healing. There's a difference between safe environment and safe to be vulnerable.
It's just being really empathetic, listening without judgment, and then asking vulnerable questions or difficult questions. And so if the person takes a risk, they realize, wow, I'm not going to be judged. I'm not going to be written off. And then also they start to connect dots in their own mind and heart. Oh yeah, this has not been working for me.
I knew that if I went back to where I was just going to go right back to where I was in that cycle. I had tried several times to break it and just couldn't. But I needed to know how to live. How do I survive? How do I take care of myself? Because it's a long period of time that was my lifestyle.
To serve the client, we have to identify what's holding them back. That's what opens the doors. If you can identify what has held them back or what has hurt them, whether it be in first childhood experience, life trauma, addiction, mental health, if you can identify it, then it's not an unknown. And once it's known, we can help them work on it.
They come to you and they want to know what's your goal. And they try to give you a good, decent time frame that you want to meet these goals in. Whether that be housing, more food resources, these things are laid out in a plan, and they give you a list of people to contact who can help you with your financial situation or your housing situation. As of now, I have a actual medical device on me. I got a button I push if I feel one coming on. And I didn't have those resources available to me before I came to the UGM.
I am in the Career Path Readiness Program. UGM has greatly made it possible for me to have my daughter with me along this journey, along reaching my goals. Being here, despite the fact I'm not living independently, I am an independent person here more than I was anywhere else. Boundaries is always a good class. That was probably a big problem I had before in the past, was setting those guidelines for this is my life, that's your life, you do what you want, I gotta do what I need. Search for Significance is always a good class. It's a class that helps you recover from, maybe, to say it lightly, insults or criticism throughout your life that has maybe made you think less of yourself. And it does help greatly. I've done that class probably 2 or 3 times.
We try to assess whether the pain that they're going through right now has become greater than the substance that they're giving into or their addiction. So they have to be at a place where they really know that they want to change, or they really know they really need to change. Because if they're not at that place, it's really hard to help someone create a plan to change if down deep they really don't want to change yet. If they are ready to change, if we sense that the pain of their addiction has become greater, then helping them start to get in touch with what are some of the consequences of the choices they've made that they're powerless over. So that could be, for some people it is a spouse that is left. For other people it's becoming homeless. As they start to get in touch with that, then they also start to get in touch with that they really, really need help and that they can't do it by themselves.
So I knew that that's where I was headed. I just didn't know how much healing I had to get and how much of the Bible do you really have to know, and all the things, and really it's just whether you're teachable and you're willing to take that risk. And at that point in my life, I was very willing to be teachable and okay, just tell me what I have to do and point me in the right direction.
In phase one of our main goals is to help the client realize I'm powerless over my addiction on my own or things that have been done to me. Then that opens them up to realize I actually need help from God and others. Another goal is helping them to immediately enter into the self-evaluation process. When they make a choice that they realize is unhealthy, they have an opportunity first to go through a set of questions on their own, and then they bring that questionnaire in front of the self-evaluation community, and they sit down, they read their questions, and they read the answers to their questions out loud in front of other people. This is what we do to make it safe in there.
To be in that environment where you are with these other people that have the same problems or variations of it, and to hear them say it, to have them sit in that self-eval stool and tell you mistakes that they've made that you might have thought you were the only one that ever made them, that's a huge thing. You're not alone. That was very, very helpful for me.
In phase two, if trust is built, a big one is looking at the negative consequences of my negative choices, because guilt and shame are two of the strongest emotions that drive people toward addiction. No matter how many good things we do, we still feel ashamed of the things that we've done wrong. If they get to a place where they're willing to take the risk to start to face those things and face how it makes them feel and how it's affected other people, because they believe that maybe God would accept me, then that becomes more of a reality for them if they share some of those things in front of another person who's not judgmental, or they share them directly with God in prayer. Also in phase two is starting to look for community outside of the UGM, and then also starting the Genesis process. In phase three, it's starting to look for someone who would be a mentor to them. And so they start building relationship with that person. It becomes another person that they can be open and honest with. And then by the end of the program, they've had a lot of experiences with that person over time. Then once they get out of the program, they have a good chance of staying open and honest and not just going back to chemicals and stuff. That's also when we really zoom in on helping them develop their individualized relapse prevention plan. They will start to identify what are the specific things that I go through usually before I get to a place where I start thinking about using and drinking again. And then also choosing who the people are going to be who are going to be on their support team, who they're going to say, okay, you can ask me these questions about my recovery. So that's phase three. And then in phase four, a big part of phase four is they start going back out into the outside world. Part of that is a practicum. They do 240 hours of work at a business here that cooperate with the UGM. It gives them an opportunity to go back into the work environment and run into the issues that they normally run into when they've been at work before, and oftentimes it's cost them their job. But the difference is they run into those same issues, then they can come back to the mission and through counseling can talk about, hey, this is what happened, this is what I started to feel. And then they have an opportunity to start addressing those things. So then it gives them more of a chance to succeed once they get out.
The Life Recovery Program for me was an opportunity to just reset, to look at my life from the time I was a little kid on, right, and to realize where my pursuits were. I was trying to find this peace and this joy and contentment through relationships, through family, through whatever, which are all good things, but I was putting them where God belonged. What this program helped me do was just time, free from alcohol. Yeah, 22, 23 months sober, not one sip of alcohol, but it's not just that, it's that I don't think about it. I don't struggle with it, I'm not tempted by it. More than anything, though, that's my point, is that time was a huge thing for me.
I did a lot of trauma therapy, and so I also I had meet with my counselor one-on-ones. I did a lot of work on self-worth and self-esteem, and Jana had me doing this ridiculous affirmations in the mirror. My name is Carrie. What I have to say is important, just as important as everybody else. And isn't that weird? Like everyone's like, oh, you can talk in front of anybody and stuff. But like, that's where I came from like having to tell myself in the mirror that what I have to say is just as important as everybody else.
The Genesis process comes in around phase two. One of the definitions in Genesis of addiction is Addiction is anything that we use to avoid unwanted thoughts, feelings, or memories. One of the focuses of Genesis is helping people get to the pain underlying their addiction and the false beliefs that their pain is created. What I mean is something that feels really, really true to them. There might be a part of them that knows it's not true, but it feels really true. One other thing I'll share about Genesis that's unique, this is really unique, and that is the FASTER scale. It's a series of behaviors that are really common for people who are addicted to go through before they give in to whatever they're addicted to. If they can look through that list of behaviors that people tend to go through, and they can figure out for themselves through questions, wow, these are really common behaviors that I go through before I give in to my chemical. If they can figure out their pattern, then they can start working on some of those individual behaviors. That allows them in the process to start heading away from that point of temptation that feels like, when I get to this place, I always give in. They can address it a week or 2 weeks before they get to that point.
I looked forward to Genesis class. You start at the beginning. That's what Genesis is. And you just work through those steps and you find out where you are on a FASTER scale. You know, like, am I anxious? Am I feeling, where am I at? And I like to always think I used to say, I'm not on that. They're like, you're always on that. In recovery, usually, but there are sometimes, you got to look back and think, where am I at? And they taught a TBRI.
I love TBRI, trust-based relational intervention. A big saying in TBRI is connect to correct. So it's saying this is not a punishment, discipline program. This is a nurture program. This doesn't just apply to kids. This applies to even our relationship with friends and peers in the program, our spouses eventually. It's a culture, not just a parenting curriculum.
That started to develop just a different relationship with us. And people, my family, were like, wow, you are a completely different mom. You're not screaming at your kids anymore. You're not yelling. Like, you're talking to them and they're listening to you.
We teach in Genesis and in recovery program that there are so many other emotions. There's deeper emotions and they're tied to experiences. And we want to help identify those emotions and how you process those emotions. With kids, we're teaching them emotional regulation. We are helping identify where kids are at and giving them tools for navigating what life brings them and the emotions of life.
I remember with the parenting, they would just work with me one-on-one. And I remember crying and they just group me in a hug, like, it's okay to feel that way. And they would give mom time. But they also really pushed me to kind of sit in those hard times with Olivia that I refused to sit with him before. And I didn't realize how important it was, because UGM was teaching me it's okay for me to feel that way. It's also okay for my kids to feel that way too. It's amazing. I would say I am in love with my kids now. Like, just love them to death.
I really had to be okay to let go of who I was. And that's really hard. I mean, when you're a criminal for 20 some years, then all of a sudden, like, you want to follow all the rules and you're doing well and you're trying to get healthy. And then it's like, wait a second, like, who am I? Like, what's really going on here? So, yeah.
That's really it. The sobriety, in other words, starts not with sobriety from a substance, but it starts with the sobriety of your heart and mind before God. And it all comes down to, am I content? Am I satisfied? Why am I looking for something else? And He tells me there's only one thing that will truly satisfy you. And when I am satisfied with that, then I'm emotionally sober, and I never have to worry about the sobriety from drunkenness ever again, because it's not an issue.
I think someone can get the information they need really quickly. I mean, someone can read a book if they need to, but the opportunity to actually have a community to begin to open up and start healing, that opportunity is part of what UGM provides. Then they get healing while they're here. And they also begin to experience it enough that they can start looking for that on the outside and practicing it themselves, because they're starting to realize, not know, but realize, yeah, I'm starting to change because I'm opening up to other people. It is a really valuable piece of UGM, and that's one of the reasons why we realize that healing comes through community and acceptance and new experiences, not just information.
They do pretty well when they're in program because there is so much support. The biggest thing I found when people get out on their own, even people who think, oh, I'm going to be fine, I'm not going to need all that support, they find that they really do need that extra support and connection.
One of the biggest things they need is they do need a community outside of the UGM where they feel like they belong and they can be open and honest.
When they do move out and they're on their own, they've got a team of people that's already established that's going to be there for them. They don't just have their counselor or just have their mentor. They might have, the average team is probably 5 or 6 people, and that's a team that they're going to meet with at least once prior to moving out, and then our goal is to meet at least 3 more times prior to commencement so that they have a good, solid group around them and they're not alone. So that's a big part of Phase 4 is getting that team put together.
They start making plans on what am I going to put into my schedule so that I don't feel all alone. So it might look like on Wednesdays I go to a recovery meeting. On Saturdays I meet with my friend Joe who's in recovery. So they intentionally start making plans as if they're outside of the mission. And they start following through with that. And then if they do that, if they choose to do that, then they have a lot better chance once Phase 4 is over. And then they're no longer in classes, they're no longer in the direct community here, but they need to start really practicing what they've decided to put into place if they're going to live a different life than they lived.
In addition to our large twice-a-year gatherings we have and the weekly aftercare support group that we have, we also have a whole group of volunteers. We have financial counseling, we have legal advice, we have one-on-one independent counseling. So there's a lot of opportunities for ladies to not just have connection, but to have the ongoing support that they need. The other thing we do is really work on where they're going to be moving and where they're going to be living. We do have the option of our aftercare housing, which is just right next to us in our facility, and all 3 centers have aftercare housing. So they have their own place, they're working, they're independent, their children can live there with them, but they still have connection and accountability to the center and to support.
I have breakfast, coffee waiting for me. I didn't always have that when I woke up in the morning. And, you know, I have blankets when I go to bed, I have a TV. I have a lot of things I never had before. And I don't take it for granted. I have a car.
That's cool.
I haven't owned a car in like 5 years. You know, I have a GED. They didn't stop there. I said, I want to go to school. I want a better education. So they helped me and sat with me while I filled out application, and now I'm a student at NIC. I'm thankful for the fact that I said, I don't even like to work. I don't like to. I'm like, I've never had a job that I like. I hate working. And so Marcia, she reached out to the director where I was getting my GED and said, is there anything Sunny can do there? And they were like, yeah, actually. So I went to work at NIC. I did like a practicum there. I still work there and I love my job. So I go to class and then when I'm done, I walk over and I go to work. And it's the best job I've ever had. And I wouldn't have that if I wasn't here. I never would have known that something like that was possible for me to do. Like, I was cleaning toilets, which, I mean, isn't the worst, but that's all I thought that I could do for the rest of my life. And I didn't know it was possible. I could be working in the adult education, helping other people get their GED, actually.
I'm at home with my wife. We are doing very well. She's thrilled for me to be home. I'm very thankful for that. And I'm going to some Celebrate Recovery meetings. And I'm working a lot, doing projects around the home. I'm digging life, you know, the way God meant for me to dig life, you know, yeah.
The miracles happen here, right? But everybody says that, the miracles happen here because they do. I would say that in the community we're helping things heal, like not putting a Band-Aid on it, which is hard. A lot of people that need the help aren't really ready for the help. But holding them accountable to certain things, that's helping because you get real change then, real change.
I spent the time in prayer and hungering, saying, God, I'm here and you're helping me. I want this help. I don't want to be here passing time. I want to be here learning and growing and making real change in my heart. And that's what happens, is that over time, as the time passes, you begin to have little aha moments.
My excitement would be getting back out there and not feeling terrified. To learn that if you focus, you can obtain it. You know, with the right path and the right team and the right mind frame, which the UGM helps you gain access to the right mind frame. You can focus, you can get it. You can go get it.
With coming here, it's long term, and they actually gave me the tools. So now when I'm having a bad day, I don't need a drink. I can replay certain things in my head, and I have certain tools now that I don't feel like, oh, I need a cigarette, oh, I need a smoke, or oh, I'm gonna go out and party and just relieve. Like, I can live through those moments without having a breakdown. I'm not the same person as I was 2 years ago. Like, I have to remember where I came from, but I don't recognize who that person is.
Mine, and I know many other lives, would not have the hope and the outlook, the good outlook that they have because of this place. This is more than just a safe haven for many of us. It's home. It's the way out of things that most people don't even want into.